Hey guys, here again from Common Sense Parenting to give you a how-to video. People often ask me how I get my kids to do things around the house, or how I get them to stop fighting all the time, or how I get them to be so helpful, or I get asked a lot how I got them to be kind and polite and all those things. And I started to write about it so that I could, share my own experiences with people about how I got my kids to do things. But it occurred to me that there was a huge shift that happened in our house before I started being able to make changes about everyday things like dishes and chores and playing together and being helpful. And that was that most people feel like they are just reacting to what's happening around them. And so they don't have any control over the way they feel or the way they act. Most of us feel that we're just reacting to situations and that's just how it is, and which makes us really unaccountable for the way that we behave. And my children were no different. Every situation was followed up by how it wasn't their fault that their sister was doing this, and so they reacted, and how someone wasn't being nice to them, and that's why they did what they did. And it occurred to me that I was the same way, that I was blaming them for the way that I was acting. I would react to their behavior, and it was really easy to say, well, if they were behaving, I wouldn't have reacted that way. But that really leaves you out of control and means that you can't do any changes in your life because you're just reacting to everything that's happening around you. And so the biggest shift in our house started with the fact that I accepted for myself that I am responsible for myself. I don't blame anyone else for the way I'm behaving or the way I'm feeling. I get to decide. I have control over the way I feel and control over the way I act. And my kids do too. And once I started changing that, I started to see a shift in them. So they would misbehave, and I didn't blame them. For my own reaction, I get to choose every single time whether or not I'm going to get angry or whether or not I'm going to stay patient and calm while I deal with them. And they also have the same choice. They get to choose with their brother or sister whether or not they're going to punch back, or whether they're going to scream back, or whether or not they're going to be calm, or whether or not they're going to come and get me instead of reacting to their brother and sister. And so every situation became a lot easier to deal with because my children and I became responsible for ourselves. There no longer was any blaming in our house, because you can't blame other people for your choices that you're making. And this made things so much easier in our house, because every time one of them would come to me and say, well, I hit because she did this to me, I would always turn and say, did you have a choice? Did you have a choice to handle it differently than you did? And they would start to pause and say yes. And I would say, tell me something that you could have done instead. And they would list off, I could have came and got you. I could have used my words. I could have walked away. I could have done these things. And they started to realize that they did have control, and they did get to decide every single time, and they were responsible for themselves. And really, so the first step in being able to change anything is being able to take responsibility for yourself and for your own life. And my children and myself were finally doing that. And so every conversation was a lot easier, and every change was a lot easier, because now everybody was responsible for themselves instead of spending all of their time blaming everybody else. Because you can't change anything if it's somebody else's fault, because you have no control over what other people do, but you certainly have a lot of control over the things that you do. Well, everything that you do. So it made it significantly easier, and it's been a huge life change for myself, because things are a lot easier for me now as well, because I am totally responsible for my life and everything that happens in it, and I have control over the way that I act and how I feel and what I want to do. And it is actually really liberating if you can accept it. Most people, it's really hard to accept though, because it's easier to blame other people than it is to take responsibility for yourself. But blaming other people just leaves you with zero control over being able to make any changes in your life, where taking responsibility can be kind of annoying because you are responsible for yourself, but it does give you full control over making any changes or shifts in your life because you have control over yourself. And so if you're responsible for what's going on, you get to control the one thing that you can, which is yourself. So this was the first steps to making any changes in our house. Again, any of those changes always started with me because I couldn't expect from my kids anything that I wasn't willing to live and preach myself. And so changes always begins with you, and that's tricky for most people. So I hope you guys follow me on my Common Sense Parenting blog or on Facebook and on Instagram, and I hope you comment below and like and share this video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will continue to do more how-tos now that I can kind of explain to people how I got them to do anything to begin with. So thanks, see you soon.